welcome to the Career Corner. My name is Heather Swift and I'm delighted to be your host. The purpose of the Career Corner is to help move people from career distress to career success. Today my guest is John Hadley. He's a career consultant from Hadley Associates, and his passion is helping frustrated career seekers, or job seekers. Thank you for being on the Career Corner today.
Oh, you're welcome, Hadley.
So in our earlier discussions, we're talking about how people have been getting very frustrated in their job search. How have you seen that changed this year over the years that you've been working with folks?
Well, this year has been improving. 2 years ago it was horrible, and I've seen the market get a lot better. Better relative to where it's been. It's not anywhere near what it was a few years ago, but so I see a lot more optimism in the people that I've talked to. There's still tons of frustrated people out there because unemployment's pretty high, but it's getting better.
What is the one or two topics that frustrate people the most, or what do you feel makes people get stuck in their job search?
One thing is that they don't have a good concept of how to market themselves, because career search is a marketing campaign, and they think I'm a project manager, I'm an IT programmer, I'm whatever, and they're not. Right now what they are is a marketing and sales executive.
Okay.
And that's a really hard concept for most of them to master. And it's not like the marketing concepts are rocket science, but they're foreign to them. So for instance, one of the things I'm constantly telling people is you really need to focus on leaving people wanting to know more. Because they go in and they try to tell everything. Let me tell you all the things I might be good at, all the things I might be interested in. And that people's eyes glaze over and they're not effective.
You're selling things that they don't necessarily care about.
Right.
Yeah.
Where a very simple, focused message gets someone intrigued, and then they say, oh, well, tell me more about that. And now you've got a real engaging conversation going.
I found that exit statements can be very tricky for people. Why aren't you at your old company anymore? And I know when I went through transition a long time ago that I wanted to explain the entire story, and I was getting into details, and I went to a career coach, and she said, why are you going there? And I thought, well, I felt like they needed to know. She said, they don't need to know anything. They need to know a quick summary and that you're ready to move on.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about preparing an exit statement, and what are some tools that you share with people?
Sure. Well, one thing, a lot of people who have some negative aspect, something, I got fired, or I had a bad relationship with my last boss, or the company took my job away because they went through a reorg or whatever. They feel like they want to share that. The most important thing they can do is, be very simple and matter of fact about that, and just move on and show that you are focused on the future. Yes, it didn't work out. We had different philosophies. It didn't work out, and here's where I'm going now, and here's why I'd be great at that. And because the more you talk about where you were and why you left, the more that's the focus.
It becomes an issue all of a sudden.
Yes, and it might not have been a particular issue in my mind, but suddenly you're saying enough about it that I'm now worried.
And I think these days, compared to years ago, there's far less of a stigma now, because so many people have gone through transition, where 20 years ago people were really anxious about sharing such news. Oh yeah. Do you find that the people that are hiring, that they're finding less of an issue with that and being able to talk about it? Well, I was part of an action taking place by my bank, but moving forward, I'm really looking forward to using my expertise to do X, Y, Z. Is that less of an issue now?
Absolutely, because we've all been through that. Very few people haven't been through a reorganization, a downsizing, some change like that. So I think hiring managers are very understanding of that these days, as long as you're very upfront. If you look like you're trying to hide something, or you're embarrassed about it, suddenly that becomes the issue. But I've worked with a number of clients who've been out of work for 2 full years before I met them. And one in particular, Kevin, he was deeply depressed because he was having trouble getting anyone to even talk to him. He kind of was withdrawing into a shell. And I said, let's get really in touch with what you bring to the table. And we went back through his background. We put together a compelling package of what it was he had to offer. And suddenly he started back on the upcycle. And very quickly, he landed exactly the job he wanted, right back at the level he was.
I bet he wishes he would have met you 2 years earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a very simple technique I taught him about what to do when they offer you the salary, got him an extra $10,000 in base comp. So he went very quickly from this, kind of deep depressed state to his career being back on track.
And what was some of the magic you were able to click on for him that he was not able to see by himself?
The first, I think, was that he'd been looking so long and having so little success that he'd lost touch of what it was that he had to offer. He'd lost faith.
Like a downward spiral almost.
It
isn't
is.
It? Yeah.
And so he really didn't have the confidence. He didn't feel, why should someone talk to me? I don't have much to offer.
It's like you turn to the desperate girl at the party. Nobody wants that.
Yes.
You have to have that self-esteem and the story, like you said, to have the interest, to the hook, to get people wanting to get more.
Absolutely. So I really worked hard with him to get him back in touch and make sure his resume really reflected that well, and that he had the talking points, that someone would ask him, tell me about yourself, and he would have what I call a hero story that he could tell that would be very compelling about
I love
his
the words of
background.
that hero story. Can you tell us about what is the hero story?
It's a way of describing your background that basically you want to be the hero of your story, and you really want to think of it that way, that this is an engaging story that someone should be interested in hearing. If I just sit there and say, well, I was an actuary for many years, and then I was this, and then I was that, it's like...
I never stole from the company.
Okay.
I was late maybe a couple of days a week, but
But the concept that I work with is the H stands for the headline. Come up with a simple statement of what you are. Like in my case, the most common headline I use is that I help job seekers who are frustrated with their search. So you come up with a simple 1 or 2 line statement of at the high level what you are. The E is your experience. So you give a brief summary of your background, starting from the oldest to the most current, but you don't go into every detail. You just tell about eras and jobs with always putting in some hooks, some result statements. I was at Commercial Life for several years where one of the things I did was to reorganize the compliance department, so we were able to put out 2.5 times the number of products a year that we had before. So you put some simple statements like that, so by the end of the story I'm saying, wow, Heather, she produces a lot of results. She's done some interesting things, and it provides hooks that listener can come back to. So tell me more about what you did at Commercial Life. And then the R is the kind of the rest of the qualifications that you bring. Now that you've told me your history, you give me a few quick lines about, when I put it all together, I believe I have very powerful presentation skills that let me communicate technical issues very well to non-technical audiences, etc. And then finally the O, the objective. And when I put that all together, what I see myself as is this. And then it kind of flows and it has a place where it's going, so it makes a really interesting story for the person.
I like that. Did you create that?
Yes.
That's a very wonderful takeaway. I have found that if people would use something like you're calling your hero statement, not just with people who are in a position to hire, but even friends, colleagues, people in your network, to have a real clear, this is what I'm about, this is what I want to do. I've had some people come to me and say, well, I heard you're well networked, or I want to network with you. And I'd ask, well, what do you want to do? Like, well, I can do anything. I was like, well, actually, you can't. We all think we can, but we really can't. So what are you focusing on? And I tell people want to help you, but you have to help them help you by being clear. So that's a wonderful way to really drive that process.
Yeah, really,
it out.
In networking, what you're really trying to do is make sure that every person you talk to has a clear picture of your goal. And if you don't have a clear picture, or you're saying, well, I have transferable skills, I can work in any industry, no one can help you. But if they all have a really clear picture, it starts to make things happen, because it kind of throws out this spider web that starts catching possibilities for you. And part of that is, I think of it as, I want to tune your antenna so that you know what to listen for, and by giving some of those key results statements and what I'm telling you, you now also are equipped to describe me. Because if what you have to say to someone else is, well, you know, I met this guy, he does something with job seekers, and maybe you'd be interested in talking to him, big deal. But if you've got a simple statement that you can use to describe me, that describes a result or a problem I can solve, it's like, oh, now I understand why I should talk to that person.
And people know really what you're about.
Yes.
In that way. How long have you been doing career coaching?
I started my practice almost 8 years ago.
Okay.
I actually started it by putting an offer out to my alumni network. I said, I've opened this practice. I've seen lots of problems with people's resumes, and anyone who wants, send me your resume. I'll give you a free resume assessment.
Oh,
I had
wow.
100 requests in 48 hours.
You were asking for that one.
Oh, I was. But I learned so much by doing those 100 assessments. By the time I was done with that, I really had a good picture of how I could help those people. And people were telling me, oh, I walked away with pages and pages of notes of what I could do.
Oh, that's great. Now, is most of your facilitation done one-on-one? Is that how your practice is set up, or do you do group workshops as well?
I sometimes do group programs. For instance, I've several times done an interview boot camp where I got 8 to 10 people together, and it actually had exercises that they did with each other in between sessions. But primarily, I work one-on-one with people. I do a lot of teleclasses. I do webinars. I go and speak at a lot of career networking groups. But my primary work is one-on-one coaching.
That's great. So people can reach you through different medias. So we'll be figuring out about this newsletter you have here handy. When people first come to you, what do you find is one of their topmost issues? Is it resume first? Is that normally the first hang up? Because it's very hard for people to consciously want to update their resume.
The interesting thing is resume, when I look at them, I find a very small percentage that are actually very good. Most people just have no clue how to sell themselves. But they also very often think it's a good one. So usually it's almost...
So it's a bad self-assessment of their, because it's really a history of what they've done. So everyone thinks, oh, this looks really good. It really tells about me, but it's not really what the buyer would be wanting to look at. Is that an accurate way of assessing that? Okay.
That's exactly the way you have to look at it. It doesn't matter what I want to tell you. It's what do you want to hear. So I always need to be focused on that WIFM question, what's in it for me, for the other person. So everything I say in my resume should be speaking to things you want to know, things that are going to engage you, not things I want to tell you.
Yes.
And so typically I will usually start with people on the resume because they need that strong sales brochure that it's almost like until I have that, I don't know what I'm going to say to people. So it helps them in their confidence. But you also have to tiptoe a little bit because people think that resume is already good. So sometimes you have to start with something else, and then they're saying, well, maybe the reason I'm not getting the interviews is maybe my resume isn't selling me as well as I should. What do you think? And then we can work on that.
No, that makes very good sense. In a moment, we'll be taking a break, and when we come back, maybe we can finish up with some must-haves in the resume that people are definitely looking for, and some networking tips for people to break out of just their comfort zone and how to maybe get more active with areas and people and associations that they're maybe not familiar with.
Yeah,
before.
happy to do that.
Okay, great. We'll be taking a break. When we come back, we'll be here with John Hadley to share some more interview and networking tips.
Is your home in foreclosure? During the current financial crisis, as many as 60,000 New Jersey homeowners will go through foreclosure. If you need help, now's time to get connected to the new statewide foreclosure mediation program. Housing counselors and mortgage mediators are available to help work out a payment you can afford with your lender.
I met with the housing counselor and they helped me save my home. They can help you too.
Hi, welcome back to the Career Corner. Today I'm speaking with John Hadley, principal from John Hadley Associates, the career consultant extraordinaire who helps frustrated job seekers. So John, can we talk about the 3 questions that you say should be answered on every resume?
Yes. I like to think of it, I was a hiring manager for many years, and I like to think of it as putting yourself in the shoes of the hiring manager. What are they looking for? Well, first, they're looking for a strong professional image. And this doesn't mean it has to be on glossy paper or anything like that. It means that it has to look like you care about the work you're presenting to me, because you had the chance to make this perfect. And most people sweat bullets over their resume. So if you either didn't or you weren't capable of it, it tells me volumes about the quality of work you're going to give me.
Okay.
So that's the first question. Does it have that strong professional image? Second question is, does it pass the 10-second test? As I'm sure you know at Lee Hecht, I mean, people are getting bombarded with resumes.
Yes.
Hiring managers, recruiters, HR people, they have these huge stacks.
Yes.
They can't afford to take more than 10 seconds making that initial judgment. Is this resume worth considering for this job? And I guarantee you, by the time they get to the bottom of the pile, they're not going back to the ones that they didn't make the cut in that first 10 seconds. So the mistake that a lot of people make is they think, oh, well, I'm going to put this objective statement at the top of my resume, which at one time that was very common, but an objective is what I want to tell you. It's not what you want to read. So it's about describing very quickly what the package is that you have to offer in a way that presents the sorts of results I'm interested in. Then the third question is, does it prove you will deliver? Telling people you've had certain job titles, that you've held certain responsibilities, that doesn't tell me you're any good at it. The fact that you were VP of operations somewhere for 10 years just tells me, okay, I know you were in that job. I don't know that you actually did it well. So the key is everything in that resume needs to point to a problem you solved or a result you produced, because that's what I'm hiring for. As a hiring manager, the only reason I hire you is because you can produce the sorts of results that I'm interested in. So those are the 3 questions.
When Absolutely Abby was here as a guest, she talked about some of the key words to put on the resume so that the spiderweb technology from the internet, all the new ways organizations are sifting and sorting through resumes, that you actually get taken out of the black hole.
Right.
And how that needs to be appropriate. So it's like identifying, like you mentioned, where you've made a difference, not just that you showed up and you actually had a job for 10 years on your resume. I once had someone under an objective when I used to do recruiting years ago say, I want to work for a competitive company. And I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, a company that competes. She was in her early 20s and had no clue, and she did not do her own resume.
Right.
Her uncle did it for her. And I thought afterwards, I always tell people, make sure you have something to do with your resume. And I would love to hear your opinion when people want to pay for a company to do their resume. Because I've heard people on the staffing side say they can tell a difference. You used to hire many executives. Could you tell a difference when it came organically from somebody versus a paid professional that just did it without knowing the person? Yeah,
I always tell people, if you're going to hire someone to, I don't like to hire someone to do your resume. If you're going to hire someone to work with you on it, make sure you're working with them, that it is a collaborative process. I mean, that's the way I work with people. Because if I write your resume, it's not your resume anymore. And the worst thing that can happen is coming into an interview or a screening, and I'm looking at this resume and I'm asking you questions and I'm saying, these are 2 different people. Your history at that point. So even if someone put the best flowery language on it, if it's not real for you, it's not right for you. So I'm always helping people. I'm trying to draw that out, but then I'm saying, does this really feel like what you bring to the table? So I don't believe in just hiring someone to go write my resume.
There are pure resume writing companies. You pay $150 or whatever, and they're like, you look all good on paper, but it's not relevant.
The ones I've seen really aren't good sales brochures. They might be written nicely, but a lot of times they sound like they came out of a textbook.
Yeah.
They don't sound
Yeah.
real. There are resume writers who do a very collaborative process and do a great job, but that's what you have to look for if you're going to invest in that sort of service.
We've had some senior executives come to Lee Hecht Harrison for their full outplacement program. Good people, but they're like, well, can't you just write up my resume?
Right.
And I had these senior consultants saying, we need to do that together. You know, I can't just look at an old resume and just update it. Like, we need to have a partnership in this. And some people really just want to say, well, you do that. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And they don't really get that. And they're frustrated. But at the end of the day, after the partnership worked, and they got a good document that was a good sales brochure and was an honest reflection of their good work, of their objectives, of their initiatives, how they made a difference, the impact they had on, you know, a bottom line or whatever initiatives, they're like, oh, I got it. But it took some struggles sometimes for them to realize that it's not just paying someone to do it, it's really putting their own self-effort into it, so it really is an honest reflection.
And then that way it actually becomes part of you. Though if you write my accomplishment, you're writing it in your words, and it's not really my accomplishment, or it doesn't really sink in. So there's a learning experience by just doing it that way, that when you collaborate with someone and now you say, yeah, I own this.
Yeah.
This is what I did. Because everything in that resume, you need to be prepared to back up in a conversation. Anything you've put in there is fair game.
Yeah.
If there's something in there that you're not proud of, that you don't want to talk about, it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, true. And also, I'm just thinking, as you're saying this, if someone else wrote my resume with flowery language and a way that I don't talk as I'm speaking, it is not going to reflect the correct vernacular. You know,
Yes.
not the theme, but the resonance with the resume will be very off in that way.
Yeah, the same thing happens in like marketing messages, in networking. There's a person who I met at a certain function, and he had worked on a very nice 30-second pitch that he was going to deliver.
Okay.
And on paper, it sounded really good. And then they went around the room, and everyone got up, and he got up, and I'm John Hadley, and I do this, and I am good at, within like 5 seconds, it's like, it was so painful. Everyone just wanted this person to sit down. When he sat down, you're like, I don't believe a word of what he said, because he didn't know what he was saying. So the best pitch on paper, the best language on a resume can actually do you a lot of harm if you can't deliver it in a very natural conversational way.
No, truly. Now, I mentioned earlier I wanted us to get to Homer. Talk to us about Homer. What is Homer?
Homer's a template I developed for how you look at the interview process, because I think it really helps to think in terms of the various stages. So the H is the homework stage. That's all the prep you're doing before you ever have any interviews, where you're making sure I've got good stories that I can tell. I've got answers to common questions. I've done my homework in general about the industry, about the type of job, and everything you do for that specific interview, where you're going to research all the people that you're going to meet and everything else. Then the O is the opening of the interview. Critical stage, because right away you've got a chance to either make a great first impression or dig a deep hole that you have to dig yourself out of. So that's one place where, for instance, the hero story comes in and really helps in giving that opening salvo that shows you what the package is I bring to the table, so you as the interviewer aren't spending the next 10 minutes trying to figure it out. I've already gotten my chance to put that out there.
Yeah.
The M, that's the meat of the interview. That's and we'll come back to that in a minute. That's everything that happens between the opening and the end.
Between the high and the by.
Yes. Then the E is the end of the interview. And you have to end it the right way. There are a number of things you want to do, but most critically, at the very end, you need to uncover and address any objections.
What's a good way of doing that? Let me vet one by you, and you tell me yes or no. Is there any reason why you think my qualifications wouldn't be appropriate for this role?
That's a very common way to do it. And it's better than doing nothing, but it's a bad way to do it.
Tell me, good. So.
Because it's encouraging me to go negative. It's encouraging me to think about all the reasons your qualifications don't fit the job.
Okay.
But you can do exactly the same thing in a very positive way.
So can you tell me, do I meet the mark on many of the qualifications you're looking for this opportunity?
You could. What I would do is say,
Tell me.
Heather, is there anything else I could tell you that would demonstrate I'm the sort of person you'd want to hire? Now, if there are real negatives, I'm going to get that sense. The thing I have to do is now watch your reaction. If your reaction is,
I gotta go to Starbucks.
yeah, then I'm like, then what I need to do is say, clearly there's something that's not being shared. It's, Heather, I get the sense that there is something wrong
Or a
that you're not sharing.
reservation,
Could I ask what that is? Even if you don't ever share it. And it might be that, oh no, you are a great candidate. I just know I'm late for a meeting with the CEO.
Okay.
Okay, fine. But otherwise, you even if that interviewer doesn't share anything with me, what's going to happen is they're going to say, he was perceptive enough to ask the question. He could sense there was something wrong. So I'm going to go up a little bit in their estimation just because I asked the question.
How important is to try to go for the close? Because if we're selling ourselves, we're the car of the day or the brand we're trying to get across. What's a way to do that? I always think it's important to ask for next steps. What's the next step in your process? How do you coach people around that?
Well, you definitely ask for the next steps. Once I've uncovered the objections, if there are any, and if there are any, then I've got to try and answer them right then. Then I'm going to find out what the next steps are. And then I'm going to set things up for me to take action. You say, so you're going to be interviewing over the next 2 weeks, and so I will plan to call you. Today's Thursday. I will plan to call you 2 weeks from Friday if I haven't heard from you by then. And so what I'm doing is I'm setting things up so that
the ball's still in your court.
It's in my court.
Nice. Yeah.
I can forget about it. I can go back, write it on my calendar, and not worry about it for the next 2 weeks. And when I call you in 2 weeks, even if you haven't made a decision, if it's going to stretch out or whatever, you get a message from me that saying, Heather, I'm following up like I said I would. I'm really interested in the job, and I'd like to talk to you more about it. I will follow up again with you on Wednesday if I haven't heard from you by then. You're starting to get a sense of how I do business, and you're saying, wow, he is such a professional. He does exactly what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it. So I'm showing qualities just in the way I do that that make it more likely that I might get the job.
So we have a little bit of time left. Real quickly, thank you note after that interview. Email or snail mail?
I think unless it's absolutely critical that it get there tomorrow, I think that the snail mail actually stands out. You have the chance to make it look perfect, and at least if you're like me, I want to really put a lot in that's going to sell me, because that's the resale. That's the R in the Homer template.
That's great. That's good. Okay, we have 30 seconds left. I want to make sure we get to mention you have this fabulous newsletter. Where can people locate your newsletter?
On my website at www.jhacareers.com. There's a box that says sign up for the newsletter. There's also a menu item that says newsletter, where people can go and they can browse selected articles and the table of contents from all the past issues.
And you also have webinars people can sign up for, your newsletter.
Right.
And what else is on your website?
I have a lot of resources, lots of articles that I've written on career growth, career development, career search issues. So there's lots of things people can find there.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
I feel like we could keep talking. There's so many good materials and ideas, so thank you very much. And thank you all for tuning in to the Career Corner. If you have any other ideas or suggestions of what you would like to see on the show, please tune into heatherswift.net and let me know. Also, we're on YouTube now, so you can find the videos on SOMAtv at Heather Swift on the Career Corner. Until we meet again, I wish you much career success.